Alright, and welcome to the latest episode of Horror 101 with Ryan Acidheads Murphy. Acidheads being my music producer name. This episode is about gore and other miscellaneous things I haven't really covered yet, mainly choices in a book, a game, or a movie. Now, this one may not take that long, it may take a little while, I'm not sure yet. Because really my stance on gore is that less is more. I'm a poet and I didn't know it. Actually, I do know that I'm a poet because I do poetry and lyrics all the time. But, yeah, less is more when it comes to gore. And I always have a preference for lore over gore, because more lore equals more mystery rather than more gore being numbing. I was trying to do some freestyle poetic rapping there, but it didn't work out off of gore and lore. I stretched it out for a little while, didn't I? But yeah, I always have a personal preference towards mystery and lore and story rather than just gore, blood, guts, and mayhem. You know, it's okay if you're into slasher flicks. I used to be, and I got over it. You know, you can only watch people getting mutilated in so many ways before it loses any kind of appeal. You know, and when it comes to things like Saw, where there really is no story that's worth... You know, actually I like the backstory of Saw. I'll take that back. I think the mythology and the backstory that is built up with Saw is good, but it's completely, to me, is completely ruined by the overemphasis on all the gore and torture, which just turns it in, or pushes it off into degeneracy. To me, I cannot understand how anybody can enjoy watching those movies. You know, maybe if you cut out all the gory bullshit and just had the story, it would be worth watching, but I don't understand the fascination with watching people in very realistic ways getting mutilated, massacred, murdered, tortured, and destroyed utterly. I don't get it. It just screams of sadism and schadenfreude to me, which I consider to be flaws, serious flaws in personality. So, yeah, I don't really get that at all, and I don't want to get it. You know, it's all in how you feel about it and how it's presented, and I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It's like I can watch, something like Hellraiser doesn't bother me at all. Even as gory as that is, it's just in the presentation, because it's not meant to be realistic. You don't have any, at no point are they trying to make you take it seriously. Whereas something like Saw, they go out of their way to try and make it seem as serious and real as possible. So, there's a line to me. Slasher movies completely unrealistic, at times even darkly silly and comical, dark humor, black humor. But, something like Saw, it's taken very serious. They try to take it very seriously when they're making it. There's not really any humor to it. It crosses that line from something being not serious and just fiction to being like a fake version of something real. It's like watching a snuff film. Even if it's a faked snuff film, you're still getting the same thing out of it that you would from watching a real snuff film. Or if you were watching simulated child porn. If they found like an adult woman who looked like a child and made it seem like it was a child being violated, even if it's fake, you're still getting the same thing out of it that you would from watching the real thing. It's crossing a line to me. But also because I'm not a fan of a lot of gore and blood and guts in movies and games, because it goes too far, too fast, and numbs you to it. It becomes a complete non-issue. Even when it doesn't cross the line, it's just something that's there. It's like this game I just started watching PewDiePie and Markiplier doing playthroughs for. It's The Evil Within. And within like the first 5 minutes of the game, there's mutilated corpses and pools of blood and guts and mayhem every fucking where. And it's like, okay, is this supposed to mean something to me? This isn't a freak out. You have had no build up to this at all. There's been no sense of tension, no suspense, no thrill. It's just all of a sudden it got really fucked up and nasty. Like I said, within the first few minutes of playing the game, you're already confronted with tons of fucked up bodies. And it's just, what the fuck? Why? Is it supposed to mean something? And it doesn't. It's just bad storytelling, bad writing, bad game design, as far as I'm concerned. You can have people playing a game for an hour and be creeping them the fuck out, and then they find one badly mutilated body. And that is a shock. Just once in an hour, or even 2 or 3 hours, you confront them with something really horrible on a non-regular basis. The less often you do it, the more impact it will have. It's all about leading up to it. That's actually what made the last part of most slasher movies kind of freaky, was that you would have the murders, but usually at least the one main character that's been pegged to be the survivor, or potential survivor, is not really aware of everything that's going on right up until the end. And that's when suddenly they start stumbling across all the dead bodies. As the audience, we've seen all these other people getting killed, but the main character hasn't. So right towards the end of the slasher movie, especially like Friday the 13th movies, you get into this scenario where the main character suddenly starts finding all the dead bodies and running around because the killer's after him. And, that's when they find all the bodies, is with the killer chasing them, which adds to the impact for them, which enhances it for the audience to a degree. Now, if we had not seen any of those murders take place, and it was set up more like a mystery, where the fuck have all these people gone? I came here with 8 other people, where the fuck are they now? And then suddenly they're being chased around by a killer, and then they find the bodies, then we're experiencing it the same way they are, in real time, basically. To me, that's way more effective than showing us the murders beforehand. That could just be my opinion. You may completely disagree. But, when it comes to horror, I am a fan. In fiction in general, I prefer, for the most part, experiencing things with the characters, but especially in horror. I think it is just so much more effective to keep it to where we do not know anything that the characters don't know. Okay, so if you did a slasher movie and kept it to where we do not know that anybody else has been killed definitively, you find clues, set it up like a mystery, you find clues about what's been going on, but you're not sure. And most of the movie is just a build-up. It's just to creep them out. The occasional jump scare, just things to creep out the character and the audience along with them, and then at the end, that's when you really fuck with them. That's where you push and you have the big chase with the killer, and they find all the dead bodies without having any revelation of them prior to that. I think that's way more effective, personally. So, really, once again, one last time, my attitude towards goriness in horror fiction, games, movies, whatnot, is less is more when it comes to gore. Because I'm more of a fan of lore. Okay, I'll stop that. Now, the second thing I wanted to go over in this one, I was going to do it in the main your main character, the last video about characters, was choices that the characters have to make. I completely forgot about doing it, so I'm going to do it in this one, to keep it to 13 videos, leading up to Halloween. Choices. See, this is where you can really screw with your audience, especially in games. BioShock being a prime example. Now, if you haven't played it, Well, I haven't either. I just watch people playing games anymore, because various reasons. As I've said in another video, I have arthritis in my hands, and I'm more interested in making things rather than playing them or watching them anymore. Especially when it comes to horror, and when it comes to games, I'd much rather make games, even though I have no skills to do it. But I'm a writer, a storyteller, so I've gotten to a point in my life where I would rather, playing games doesn't appeal to me anywhere near as much as the idea of ideas for games and analyzing them. So, and I don't need to play a game to analyze it. I just watch other people play them and analyze it and use what they're doing or what they're saying to kind of keep me from getting into the game too much, so I can just kind of, remain detached intellectually and analyze the game while I'm watching them play. In BioShock, as I was saying, is a prime example of forcing characters to make hard choices in a game that can fuck with the player. And you can do the same thing with stories and movies. You confront a character with a hard choice that, is not an easy thing to decide on, and it's kind of fucked up. In BioShock, if you've never played this game, as I was saying before I got off on my little side trip there about why I don't really play games anymore. When you're playing, there is this component to the game and the story involving genetic modification. And you have to get this substance in order to modify your genetics, which you kind of need to do in order to survive through the game and play it properly. And you can find it through the game, but the best source for it is going to be these little girls called little sisters that have been modified to act as reciprocals, containers for this substance. And they're protected by these giant robot guys called Big Brothers, I think, or Big Daddies. It's Big Daddies and Little Sisters. And you can destroy a Big Daddy, and then you can capture the little girl, the little sister. And when you do that, you're confronted with a choice. Do you harvest the substance from her, which will kill her, or do you let her go? Okay, and if you let her go, you still get some of the substance, just nowhere near as much. So you can get a lot of it, which will allow you to do more power-ups and stuff quicker, and survive in the game better, but you'll kill her. Or you can let her go, and which basically removes this ability from her. It turns her back into a normal child. And you don't get as much of the substance, but you haven't hurt her. You've allowed her to become normal again. So you're faced with this choice as the player. Do you kill them when you come across them in order to get more of the substance, or do you do what's really the right thing? Do you choose selfishness and self-preservation, or do you choose the right thing? And you're presented with this, two different ears, or two different voices in your ear. You've got the one that's the woman who created these little girls and is trying to rescue them now, and the guy who's kind of leading you through the game early on, who's telling you to do the selfish thing, because this place is horrible, and the only way you're going to survive is to be as horrible as it is. Okay, so you're confronted with this choice. What do you do? Okay, and that can be a very effective tool for creating more horror. Because the idea is to make the character, be it again in a game that the player is controlling and confronting them with horrible choices, or horrible choices for a character in a book or a movie or a TV show or whatnot, is to, it's just a way to effectively screw with the audience or the player, because it's forcing you to do something that you don't really want to do. Or maybe you just don't care. That depends on what kind of person you are. Some people will just say, it's just a game, I can do whatever I want and it doesn't matter. Which it really detracts from the experience of playing the game to not place any kind of morality or anything on watching it or playing it. It really robs the people that made it of their ability to tell you their story, the story they want to tell you, and get you to interact with what they've created. If you just take that attitude, oh, it's a game, I can do whatever I want. You know. So, it's really all about, again, kind of messing with the audience or the player and trying to get them in scenarios where they have to make choices that are really fucked up, but they have to do it. One way or the other, they have to make a decision. And it can be a very effective way to screw with them. It may not really have a whole lot to do with horror, because this same sort of thing goes for any kind of movie, any genre, really. You know, it's not exclusive to horror. But if you've already gotten a setting that's really nice and creepy, you've already succeeded in creating this mystery, and you're effectively using all the other elements of horror that I've been discussing in the other videos. If you've been effectively doing all of that, and then on top of that, you can screw with the head of your audience and or player by forcing them to make really nasty choices as well, it's just one more way to fuck with them and make the horror and the scariness and the creepiness and make it even more intense. Okay? Because then it becomes more personal. If you make them choose, or, you know, a character in a book or a movie or whatever, you know, because if they are the main character, the audience is going to have a certain degree of connection to them. And if they're forced to make a really nasty choice, it's going to affect how the audience sees them and feels about them and feels about the whole thing. And as a player, this is even more effective in games, because then it is not a character's choice. You're not just using it as something that the audience is seeing and playing with their emotions. You are actually interacting with the player through the character by forcing the player to make a choice, a bad choice, where, you know, they don't really win either way, depending on how you want to look at it. It's a fucked up choice either way. And that, in games especially, it is such an effective tool for really screwing with their head. And if you've already created a scary atmosphere and forced them into, you know, to make decisions they don't want to make anyway, but aren't necessarily, you know, like opening doors when you've made them afraid to open doors, you know, and they're afraid of what could be behind every tree and every door. They're scared. And then you make them make fucked up decisions too. Absolutely beautiful way to fuck with your players in games. Okay, so I think that wraps up Gore and Lore. Or rather, choices. But I thought that Gore and Lore sounded nicer, so that's why I went with that for the title. I'll do my usual end of YouTube video stuff now and wrap it up. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and hit that upvote button. I appreciate that, always. Leave any questions or comments you might have. And if you have any other topics about horror you'd like me to cover, I'll get to them whenever I possibly can, and I'll do my best to cover them for you. Negativity-wise, keep your negativity to yourself. This is supposed to be about having fun and learning about horror and discussing horror. So if you disagree with me about something when it comes to the topic, as in the use of gore and the use of bad choices, fucked up choices in games and, you know, for characters and stuff, by all means, we can have a discussion about that. But if you just want to bitch because you don't like my view on movies like Saw and whatnot, then keep it to yourself. It's not the topic. It's not really the topic of this video. I don't care, and I'll probably just ignore you. But trolls, on the other hand, I really don't like trolls, so I'm going to give you my usual warning. If you try to troll me, I will be even nastier back to you, because I don't like trolls. I think you're disgusting examples of humanity. Because what you do when you know you can get away with it shows who you really are. The fact that you think that it's fun to be a troll online because you know that you can do it without consequences just shows that that's what you're really like. It's who you really are inside, and I think that makes you a disgusting person, so fuck off. So, trolls beware. More positively, go ahead and subscribe so you know when I put up new videos, and please come to my website, acidbathproductions.biz. Come check it out. It's a forum, so we can have some more in-depth discussions about stuff there. And horror, I have a whole section on Halloween and horror and stuff, so we can have some chit-chat about horror and movies, and I have horror stories and various stuff about Halloween thing, all that good shit there. Some threads that you can check out, and we can have discussions on and about and whatnot. And I think that wraps everything up nicely. Comes to an end for the video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.